Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Okay. Good luck.
So
Stage
can you
is all
see,
yours. Yeah, sorry.
can you see the PowerPoint presentation that
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sharing?
Yeah, it's your first slide. It's
Okay.
impact of privacy on cybersecurity. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. And thank you everybody who all are here for joining. Um, today the topic that I'm going to talk about is the impact of piracy on cybersecurity. So let's start. So as you all know, on digital piracy, what's a piracy is like software piracy is an unauthorized reproduction, distribution, and use of software. So all the three aspects, right? You can't reproduce, you can't in an unauthorized way buy a software and distribute it. That goes against the license agreements, and also the use, how you use it. You have there are certain acceptable uses of each software um, or product that you buy. If you don't follow those acceptable use policy, then you go into the realm of digital piracy. So digital piracy overall broadly is of six types. First is soft lifting. Soft lifting means sharing a program with someone who's not authorized by license agreement to use it. It's like buying a software like a Microsoft Word document, Microsoft Office or Microsoft Word doc, for example, and sharing with 5 or 10 more people, something like that. So it's very common in colleges and school where they don't follow the laws. They buy limited set of software copies, and then the whole lab, they will install the same copy of software, whether it's operating system or Microsoft Office, which are the most common ones. Second is hard disk loading, which is like loading an unauthorized copy of software on a computer which is being sold to the end user. So you don't, it's like there's no license attached to that software, but um, to make it a good deal, the resellers, what they do is, let's say they will give you some copy of software for free. So this is called hard disk loading. Third is renting. Very simple, as the name suggests. Renting is buying something digital, whether it's a software or a movie or a music, and then renting it out to someone for temporary use. So renting is different from soft lifting because renting is like renting someone for a temporary use. So the temporary word comes into the picture. Fourth is unbundling, where uh, somebody selling standalone software, which is originally meant to be included with a specific accompanying product. So that means, um, a printer which comes with a driver, and the seller is selling the driver separately with the printer. Fifth is counterfeiting. Um, we have seen this very commonly in many local markets, where sometimes we fall into trap of counterfeiting as well, where we end up buying counterfeit products, which are the fake copies of software which actually look very real. Sixth is online piracy. This one we all know. We go to online sites, peer-to-peer softwares, torrents, to download unauthorized software or cracked softwares, right? Which are cracked in a sense. You don't need to enter any license key, and when you install them on your workstations or laptop, they just work. I would like to share some facts about all these piracy and their types before we jump into cybersecurity in our next slides. So for soft lifting, this is the most common form of piracy, right? So that's the fact that it is the most commonly used form of piracy. As per SIIA institution, 60% of the software copies are soft lifted in Eastern Europe. So it's very much common and widespread in Europe. Like more than half of their software copies are soft lifted. Hard disk loading, we have talked about it. Typically, it happens on the resale computer shops where you buy a piece of hardware or a computer and it's already loaded with unlicensed software. Renting, this mainly affects movie industry heavily. Movie industries lose, I think, more than 60 billion or 70 billion dollars, per year due to this renting, where people just buy a movie and then rent out to others. OEM unbundling. So recently, there was a news on this that this is a growing threat in Gulf, where 1 out of 5 PC buyers is a victim who pay additional for pre-installed software, meaning the software comes installed with the product or a hardware, but the sellers there are charging the buyers extra for those already included pre-installed software. Counterfeiting, as we all know, Microsoft products are the most used products, so they're the most counterfeited products. Online piracy, it's also very common, right? So 42% of the software running in the world actually are illegally downloaded. So through this, we can see that how widespread is piracy. Almost half of the software in the world are illegally downloaded, which means there is a very high risk that we are running into from piracy to cybersecurity, because as we will see here now in this slide, when you have so many pirated softwares or illegitimate software in your environment, in your system, then what all risks that poses. So there are two major risks for cybersecurity. The first one is that the pirated softwares can carry viruses and other type of malwares that infect computers. So that's the main risk. I mean, when you get a pirated software, there's a very high chance that there'll be some kind of malware, one or more types of malware already installed or embedded into it, right? So before we go into those metrics, we can see what kind of malwares we have, just to familiarize ourselves that malware is a very broader term. So malware means a malicious software, a software or a program which has some malicious intention, which to perform. Various kind of malwares are viruses, right? Which spread with user actions. You click some buttons, you click install, they just spread on your PC or workstation. You have worms. Worms are like they spread automatically. So once you have a worm in your system, it can spread onto your network very quickly. Then you have Trojan. Trojan is like we know about Trojan horses from a famous movie called Troy. So Trojans, basically what they do is they disguise their legitimate software, but they end up creating a backdoor in your system. And through that backdoors, the attackers can then do command and control on your system. They can control your system, and through your system, and if you're located in a, let's say, a corporate network, they can make a lateral movement from your system to to your network, and that lateral movement, through that lateral movement, they can compromise other systems, other critical business systems. Maybe one more we can go through is adware. Adware is like sometimes we end up downloading some software and we suddenly see so many ads coming up, right? So that is what adware does. So on this risk itself, we'll talk about this NUS study. So in 2017, NUS, commissioned by Microsoft, did a study specifically on impact of piracy on cybersecurity. They analyzed 458 samples, from Asia Pacific markets, and what they found was that there were close to 200 malware strains which were recorded across those samples. Among them, surprisingly, there was Trojans were the most common. So that means when you buy all these CD and DVDs, counterfeit software, when you download pirated software uh, from websites, you run into a risk of downloading a malware, right? And that risk is like we will go through that in the next slide. But what we can see is the Trojans are the most common, meaning what attackers want is they want to get control of your system. They want to create backdoors because they want to maintain that control so that they can do lateral movement in your system and ultimately achieve their objectives, which is mostly um, uh, to get their hands on the critical data, the either it's personal account data or account data or credit card data, any data that's critical to my business. That's what most of the attackers want. Next is, a range of worms, viruses, and droppers were also discovered by that study, which can replicate without human intervention and spread rapidly. So as we were talking about the probability, they found that 33% of the downloaded pirated software came bundled with a malware. So if you're working in an organization, right, if you work as a part of a company, or if it's your personal computer also, if you download a pirated software, there's a 1/3 chance that you will be infected with a malware. Most of those malwares, malicious programs, deactivated the computer's anti-malware software. So your all prevention and detection mechanisms are nullified by the malwares as well. And of the CDs and DVDs, let's say if you go ahead and buy CDs and DVDs which are counterfeited, and let's say by mistake you just didn't go to an authorized store and you went to a very a store where you can't basically tell whether they're selling a licensed authorized software or not. There's a 61% chance that they will contain multiple pieces of malware inside it. Okay, so the second risk is some copies of pirated software, as we know, right, cannot update properly. So once you have pirated software, centrally, when a company pushes new patches or updates to their softwares, because you're not running a licensed version of the software, you won't be able to update your software. So what that does is that lead users to continue using old version with the security holes, meaning the software that you are running now may have critical vulnerabilities. And what they can do, unpatched vulnerabilities are the most common attack vector exploited by ransomware actors. So this is a study done by this company called Ivanti, which says that 65 new vulnerabilities were identified in 2021 that were exploited by ransomware gangs. So which is like it's like out of 288 vulnerabilities, almost 56% vulnerabilities were continually exploited by the ransomware gangs. So that's another huge risk, as we've seen that there have been so many ransomware attacks recently. So yeah, I mean, downloading pirated software can directly lead to a very high risk probability of getting into a ransomware attack. So now we'll talk about some risk mitigation and policies. How can we mitigate this risk personally and on an organization wide basis? So first is user training, meaning first thing is we should train our users to have good cyber hygiene practices. First, very common thing is they should be able to spot phishing emails and links. Although you can have automation around it and you can block those phishing emails or links through your email servers and clients, but still, we've seen that many phishing emails can still go past through your defenses. These links are malicious. When you click those links, some unintended software can get downloaded. So it's always good to train users on cyber hygiene every now and then. And then other aspect of user training is that they should use proper process to download software. Especially in an organization, they should not just go to any website to get any software. They should go to their central centralized software management tool to download softwares which are latest, which are patched, which do not have vulnerabilities tagged to them. Next is web filters. So these are just common web filters like Cloudflare or Symantec. They are used by organizations to block malware download. So if a user or an employee by mistake gets phished, they end up clicking on a link, these web filters, what they can do is they can block the malware download into your network. Second aspect of web filters is the URL filtering, which is based on web content rating. So they maintain a web content rating so that any URL or any website which is not rated very well or which is at risk of hosting malwares or any other viruses, they're all filtered out by these tools like Cloudflare or Symantec. Two-factor authentication. So this is important it's important to protect your critical applications or in general your applications with a two-factor authentication mechanism, so that what we have seen in the past is in some incidents, there was a user in a particular university. He ended up downloading a pirated software just to speed up his work. So with that software came a kind of a Trojan. So sorry, not a Trojan, a spyware. So what attackers did was they end up stealing his credentials. Now, when they stole his credentials from a remote network, they were able to authenticate, make a remote desktop connection to his system using his credentials. And because two-factor authentication was not in place, they ended up compromising the system of that university. So that's why a two-factor authentication is very important. Next is restricting privilege access. One of the most common is in this context is like you restrict admin access of an employee to a workstation, so that there's a preventive control, so that even if they want to download any unauthorized software or any pirated software, they're not able to install it because they don't have admin permissions. And the last one is acceptable use policy, which is very important. This is a policy which is very close to the first one, user training, but it's like acceptable use policy, which makes things more legal and compliance based in an organization, where company-wide you have a acceptable use policy of how certain products or software should be downloaded and how they should be used, how should they be licensed, and for how many people they are licensed, so that we don't have issues like soft loading in our organization, there are no compliance issues, and so forth. So yeah, that was it. So back to you, Anna. Can you hear me?
Gaurav, I can hear you. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for your wonderful session, and it was
sure.
really very interesting. I personally enjoyed your session. I'll ask the audience that if they're having any question, they can drop their questions in the chat or in the QA session, and Gaurav is here to answer all of our questions.
Sure.